And welcome to today's Lemongrass Live. Rise with SAP, is your organisation ready? For the next 30 minutes, our team will talk through some experiences, challenges, and how customers can prepare for an SAP migration to the cloud. The session will be recorded and available on demand in the next couple of days. We welcome questions during the session. Feel free to use the GoToWebinar chat control panel, and we'll answer these during the session. Any questions we don't have time for directly, we will respond to you directly. I'll now hand over to Jason to introduce the team.
Thanks, Amanda, and welcome everyone. My name's Jason Nicol. I'm the Executive Vice President of Lemongrass in Asia Pacific, been with the business 6 years, and in the SAP ecosystem nearly 30. And I welcome my fellow panel members. We'll start with you, Barry. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi there, my name is Barry Cullen. I'm a Senior Service Delivery Manager here at Lemongrass. I've been with Lemongrass for 5.5 years now. Been in and around the industry for 20 plus years. Let's leave it at that.
Thanks, Barry. Mike.
Yeah, hi everybody, Mike Lannon. I'm a pre-sales solution architect for the 4+ years at Lemongrass, and I'm looking forward to this discussion about Rise and how we can get customers onto the cloud.
Awesome, thank you guys. Look, I'll kick off. The session today is really an information session. Lemongrass has been moving and managing SAP customers on the cloud for nearly 15 years now. We're a global organization in 20 countries, and the result of that experience has meant that we have a lot to offer customers that are considering Rise. We've been a Rise partner for a little while now, having done our first migration a few years ago, and really have a number of services and experience that can help people navigate the various challenges with trying to get your organization ready. So the idea of having the panel today is to get a cross section across business, support or managed services, organizational design, technology, etc. So to open up the session, just a little bit of context. So it's well publicized that SAP, a cloud company, is driving the Rise agenda across both its Grow and traditional Rise propositions. The need for that is driving customers to consider the timing of doing a move to Rise and what that means for their organizations. Traditional customers that have been running ECC have till 2027 on mainstream maintenance and can extend that maintenance for another few years to 2030, which is driving a time frame in the market that is having customers look at it more and more, particularly with those timeframes coming. Also, other pressures and needs to innovate, take advantage of the things that are coming out of the hyperscalers is also really driving our customers to consider Rise at a more rapid rate. But as customers are considering Rise, they really need to unpack what it is, what that means to their own organization, what that means to their partnerships that they've had in place with other organizations. What do they start doing? What do they stop doing? What do they keep doing? And what happens when you look holistically at the solutions that they use to run their enterprise outside of SAP as well as SAP to create still a seamless and operational set of technologies and processes to be able to run the business. So Rise, in the most part, we've talked a little bit at a high level, is hyperscaler SAP support, SAP software bundled into a service. So transitioning from ECC or S4 to Rise is the standard approach, and obviously all the applications that are within that. But there's hyperscaler choice. There's, do you go brownfield or greenfield? Do you look at the various different options from a Rise perspective? Public cloud, private cloud editions. There's many things that organizations are trying to get their head around and understand ahead of heading towards that Rise journey. How quickly do you move? What are the things that you need to consider over that time frame, and which partners do you, again, start using, stop using, etc. So I'll kind of pause there from an overview level. Let's try and use this panel that we've got together Mike, we've heard a little bit about RISE, but do you just want to unpack it perhaps a little bit with an overview of from your perspective, what's in the RISE service?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Jace. So as you mentioned, it's a bundle of services, right? So customers have. So my personal view straight away is like a SaaS, so SAP's version of a SaaS, but with some customer input. So again, customers do have the flexibility of the hyperscaler they choose, where they run their workloads. So currently it's Azure, AWS, and GCP. They also can have a choice of what edition of RISE as well. RISE comes with several editions: Base, Premium, Premium Plus. So there's some options customers can pick and choose on how they end up on the target system. That's my basic view on RISE. And it comes with one SLA, so the customer signs the contract with SAP, and then the SLA is managed through SAP, and partner is involved with the migration, and also after migration with the managed services. We'll touch base on that probably later with Barry on the call, because he's the expert on managed services. But yeah, having a factory model of RISE comes with some pros and cons, right? So I see RISE as a steady state platform, very good, very stable for customers to run their critical workloads. The migration onto that target architecture is possible, and again, depending on the strategy, you already touched on the greenfield, brownfield, or bluefield methodology, but it comes all with the planning, right? So we are dealing with Lemongrass with very large customers with very large systems, and especially in some of the business critical industries, so utilities and financial services. Business downtime, technical downtime is critical. So we have to come up with some creative solutions to migrate those workloads onto RISE. But at the moment, there are some limitations to get the data from the source to the target.
Okay. And do you, just asking, I'm not technical, I'll make that from the outset. Does a customer need to be on HANA before they move to RISE? Do they have to be on S4 before they move to RISE? Can they move ECC to RISE?
Yeah, good question. So the answer to your question is yes, it's possible, right? So RISE is very flexible as well from a migration perspective of what the customers currently run as a source, right? You mentioned ECC to S4. Yes, that is possible. Yeah, you can do that in a one-step migration and upgrade. So we've done a project here locally in Australia for a company called Yancoal. So they moved from ECC 6 and Spec 8 onto RISE S4HANA 2021 version at the time. We also seen some customers running on Suite on HANA, so ECC 6 on the HANA database. That can also be migrated as a lift and shift onto the RISE target architecture. Customers running ECC on non-HANA database, they are still recommended and urged to run ECC on HANA and then put it on RISE as a target, or go from ECC on any database with a system conversion to RISE on an S4 system. Yeah, so there's flexibility as well on the target, but yeah, the source doesn't really matter. A partner will get you from A to B.
Yeah, and I guess just adding to that, there is certification for partners to be able to do the migration. So Lemongrass is obviously one of those that we got off the back of doing Yancoal a few years ago, and have used that very successfully. So there's quite a structured approach, I think, technically, correct me if I'm wrong, Mike, for getting into the RISE tenants that are created by SAP.
Yes, correct.
So Barry, we talked a little bit about sort of target and destination from a technology perspective, but as a born in the cloud business, obviously we've done a lot around managing customers and what that means. What are we seeing as the differences with SAP taking the role of managing those customers, and the sort of things that people need to think about before, during, and after the migration?
Yeah, it's obviously a lot of those types of questions that we're getting asked at the moment. I guess, we've got a highly successful operate methodology that we use, whether it be RISE or not. We obviously have evolved and adapted that methodology for RISE. So we provide an advisory service pre-migration. So it's something that's key at the moment, I think, with customers that have got a lot of questions, not really sure what they should be doing. It's a new, not so new, but as large enterprise organizations get to the point where it's becoming time critical, it's like, right, we've got to have these conversations. So this advisory service that we provide is a great is a great service. Really, it takes around about 6 to 8 weeks, really, where we go in and we find out where the customer's at this stage, where they're looking to go, what that kind of new operating model is going to look like. Obviously, these enterprise customers have already got engagements in place, and services being provided in many different ways, and they just need to understand what's going on for the future for them. So that's a good way to start off the process. I guess during the migration, we complete the operate design component. That entails a number of workshops that we run with the customers, where first port of call for us is to firm up the scope. Now, as I mentioned, we use our RISE service delivery catalog to do that, and that'll include items like any CAS items. So I guess when we talk about CAS, we're saying cloud application services that vendors can actually perform on behalf of a customer if a customer is looking to take that pathway. I'm sure CAS will be discussed a little bit later, but for example, we would look at cloud application services like release version management, maybe application operations or application monitoring, for example, and how all that kind of works around the new RISE models that are there. After we get through firming up that scope, then we would look at the likes of what's the SLAs look like, what kind of ITSM integration do we want to have, what's the service ratio that we're going to provide, and then any additional items that customer may ask us to look after. That gives us a base to build out the service from, perform operational readiness, some hypercare tasks, in normal circumstances and time, just to kind of onboard the first set of workloads that we normally receive as part of the data migration. So,
and kind of two questions on that. So if a customer was looking to move some RISE applications, but also non-RISE applications, is that why you do the design all at once up front?
Yes, yep. It's not as if it's RISE only. And therefore the design only encapsulates RISE. It can be RISE, non-RISE workloads, and non-SAP workloads as well at the same time. So we can encapsulate all those components in the one design.
Yeah, and are you seeing organizations leveraging people like Lemongrass or providers like Lemongrass to be that window between, I guess, old world and RISE world, as far as like a RISE wrapper?
Yes, yep. So we're having a number of requests around that RISE wrapper offering at the moment, and I think customers are looking for for ourselves to really come in, as I mentioned, and as part of that advisory component. Well, it really brings to the fore what we've got to offer and starts to guide the customer through all the different components that they have queries about, I guess, or concerns about, whether it be RISE, non-RISE, and as I mentioned, non-SAP workloads that they may already be dealing with.
Okay. Just jumping back to Mike, Barry mentioned CAS services. Can you explain what they are and why it's so important to understand them?
Yeah, I can definitely give it a try, right? So with the RISE contract, there is a document attached called roles and responsibilities. That's a 1,200 line item document with all the service delivery catalog in a RISE contract, right? So to be an expert in that document, that you will need to spend some time to read it and understand it. But from a high level, sitting at time, there are 5 major buckets of services within the roles and responsibilities. So you got standard services, optional services, and additional services. Those 3 components are only provided by SAP. So customers will sign up and SAP will deliver those services out of the R&R document. Then there are 2 buckets left. One is the CAS, Cloud Application Services, and one are the excluded tasks. The name will give it away. Those tasks can be delivered by the customers themselves, by a partner of choice, or customers can also buy those services at an additional price from SAP. So typically CAS, so let me one step back. So CAS services is important to understand from a customer because it's roughly 20% of the R&I line items are CAS services. So customers are sometimes confused when they sign up like a managed services with SAP, that SAP would look after everything, right? And that's not the case. And it comes back to Barry's point, and I'm very excited that at Lemongrass we announced earlier this week advisory services on RISE. And I'm very excited on that journey as well. I'm involved with lots of customers discussions locally, and that wrapper, that managed services component, that is a very hot topic. So it's crucial to understand that model, including the CAS services, what a customer should look at. So some customers have a really strong in-house team, right? What are you going to do with that team, right? So
I suppose that comes back to the point that Barry was kind of making about getting the organizational design sorted out at the start so that you can work out how you transition, I guess, to that new working model.
Yeah, but also on the flip side, there are customers who don't have a strong team in-house, so they outsource everything to an outsourcing partner, right? So it all comes back to prepare and design upfront before you sign up for the contract, and really understand this R&R document is super important.
Yeah, I think we're also seeing customers taking the opportunity to look at their current providers, contracts that they've got in place, and using this as an opportunity to change that as well.
Yeah.
Okay. So obviously you've got the software component that you're going to trade maintenance, get your S4 licenses, look at BTP, look at some of the other innovations that are coming down the pipeline like Joule. We've talked a little bit about obviously the service that you get, so the service inside RISE, what's included from an SAP perspective, the various different levels of support that you can have, how you can involve partners through CAS services, and then obviously there's some excluded things that you could then get partners or do yourself. But RISE seems to be more and more exclusively on the hyperscaler, and we haven't really talked about AWS, Azure, and GCP yet. Why does a customer need to understand that bit if they're buying the service from SAP? Mike, do you want to kick us off?
Yeah, there are 2 ways I can answer this question, right? So one is, so moving your workloads on the hyperscaler makes sense, right? Those companies like AWS and Azure, they are built and created to host and run workloads, massive amount of workloads, large workloads, etc. Right? So they have the capacity and the capabilities to run the hardware on the hyperscaler level. So SAP in the past, they tried to compete with their hack offering and with RISE, with a new flavor and contract. They say, look, we just use the capacity from the hyperscalers and we will build our services on that modern hyperscalers target solution.
Yeah, I think like if I have a stab at that from an operator perspective, then so I guess one of the the hyperscalers are forever innovating, and and going down this pathway allows customers to ensure that they access that innovation. So I guess we give some examples, where we've had during operate programs that we've had with customers. You know, there've been the latest release of an instance has come out. An instance type has been released, and it's faster, it's cheaper. And then we work through the process of like, let's migrate to that new instance type so that we can actually save the customer some money, or at least, you know, get through the workloads a little bit quicker with the additional speed that provides. So you know, that being one item, other customers have come to us, you know, and having the ability and flexibility that the hyperscalers provide us allows us to go away and spin up environments quickly, whether it be, you know, a last minute project that's come to the fore that we need an environment here, you know, we get the request and we go and spin up those environments. Now that type of innovation is good for customers. It also opens up further doors for customers to look at automation. And, you know, if we see these types of scenarios coming up, the customer can say, you know, listen, can we build some custom automation that allows us to do this even quicker? And then there's other, for example, Lemongrass automation that can be utilized by customers under those particular instances, even when you're in a BAU operate scenario. That being said, you know, spinning things up is one thing, but also removing and taking away quickly to reduce cost or impact on budget breaches, for example. There are other element, the other side of the coin that we now, you know, we're able to do at very short notice.
Yeah, I'd have to put one exclamation mark on that comment about that agility and flexibility on RISE. Because yes, they're using the hyperscaler, and there are options to scale up and down and add additional instances at a quicker pace. But it is because it's a factory model, right? So SAP needs to certify the whole process, the whole management behind it, that's a tool set, etc. So customers won't have that flexibility of, tomorrow I need a new sandbox system to try out a new business function. Let's build it. So it has to come through that service delivery catalog, and there are some lead times and build times, and also contract times for those environments. So yes, it's much more flexible than on-prem or the hack model, but still not as flexible as native cloud. Who knows in the future they will.
I suppose that brings it just full circle though. I think, Mike, the point that you're making about understanding what you need, getting it in time, requires the organization to understand how that process works, making sure that you have the right people in the right places to be able to make the requests in the right way to get that hyperscaler provision. Look, we're probably out of discussion. I just quickly check from Amanda if there's any questions from the floor.
Yeah, we've had a few actually. So the first one, so what do you see as the most common mistakes made when moving to RISE?
That's always a good one. Mike, do you want to kick us off?
Yes, I can. So it's probably many, but the one top of my head now, and that's relevant, is sizing, right? So if SAP, so if the customer and SAP don't have the metrics to size the target, you might end up with a wrong target architecture and size of your target database, which will at the start you won't notice it, but as soon as you do the migration, you will run into all sorts of issues, and then you have to resize that target system, and then again it will get messy. To understand, do a proper planning sizing exercise with the right partner. That will speed up your journey onto RISE. Yeah,
I suppose that's probably equally probably leads just back to you again, Mike, with respect to that question. I suppose technical debt and trying to get rid of that before moving to RISE. And obviously, if you're swapping databases or OS, obviously that has some considerations on getting the sizing right as well.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, absolutely.
Look, from my perspective, it's just making sure that you've got the scope clearly understood of those elements that are in your RISE contract, and they match. I guess the enterprise need. One of the things that we find a lot is that there's some RISE ready applications. There's a bunch of applications that are traditionally old from SAP that aren't necessarily RISE ready. And then for most organizations, there's a portfolio of other products that need to live quite close to the SAP environment. So either coexisting in the same accounts to reduce latency, or the same security profile, etc. So for me, it's understanding the scope beyond your sort of SAP bill of materials. That's one of the common mistakes we see people make. They think about it afterwards, and then it's how do we quickly get some of those shop floor systems or enterprise GIS systems are another good example that need to coexist. Barry, did you have anything with lessons learned?
I think, I mean, it comes back to that topic that we've discussed earlier. That seems a common theme around knowing your organization. So, doing that upfront work, really that planning piece to understand, where you're going and what you want to do and what that operating model looks like going forward. Right. That you have to try and limit your risk. By doing that, you are in the know, you're limiting your risk. But probably the other thing that's key is to understand, the types of roles that are required to work in that framework. So the type.
Sorry, mate. I was just going to say, look, probably just rounding out that question, Amanda, for the person that asked it, is just that I think there are some mistakes. There were some early movers. I think that SAP's services come on a long way from a RISE perspective, but there's also plenty of organisations like Lemongrass that have got lots of experience in moving customers to RISE and running workloads natively on the hyperscaler. So ask for advice and ask well in advance of entering into the SAP contract. That's probably my biggest takeaway on that question.
Okay, I have got another one. So with RISE with SAP, how is the responsibility for system maintenance and future upgrades handled? And does SAP take care of the ongoing tasks required for the internal IT team, so the customer and
Mr. Lannon, upgrades are your things. How do we execute an upgrade under a RISE?
Yeah, unfortunately, and that's also a bit of the demystifying and the myth busting, which I like to do with customers as well, because I've spoken to a customer and they mentioned, do I still need to upgrade my systems on RISE, or SAP take care of it automatically every quarter? And then no, it's the code base is the same if you run it on premise or cloud native on RISE. So upgrades, unfortunately, are mandatory. And it comes back to understanding the roles and responsibility matrix, right? Yes, SAP will take care of the majority of patching and upgrades, but the whole planning and functional code remediation activities, that's still on the customer themselves or on the partner of choice. That's my short answer.
And you're specifically meaning the private edition, yeah? The public edition is probably a little bit different.
Right? That's Grow, right? Not talking about Grow. That's the quarterly. So that's customers get confused, and SAP sales rep might also confuse themselves. But yeah, on the private edition, on the public cloud, yes, upgrades are mandatory.
And how does that feature in the roles and responsibilities, Barry, or does that come back to, as you said before, understand that up front and understand it not just from a migration perspective, but a long-term run perspective? Is, I guess that's what you're probably saying.
Yeah, I mean, that Mike's touched on it a couple of times around the roles and responsibilities. That is a key item. Like 1,200 line items in an R&R is quite extensive. So taking the time to work with customers and work through what they are, who's responsible for what the gaps are within that roles and responsibilities is key to understand. Then also working with customers to understand, what's right for their business, what should they select, what additional services should they have, and in turn, like what's the plan for services that partners can provide, and whether they should be included and who should be running those. As Mike mentioned, demystifying that R&R document is I think a key component. Again, I'm always coming back to, can you limit risk? If you can, then let's look at that. Let's work on that and demystifying that R&R roles and responsibilities document is key, I would say.
Yeah, and look, I think listening to both of you, I think it just also, I think you touched on it earlier, Barry, about just understanding the roles that partners play in that piece. I don't think when an upgrade comes along that you'd be looking just solely to try and do that internally necessarily, unless you've got a big and capable team. There's certainly going to be roles for your existing and potentially new partners to play in that upgrade cycle, even if they're acting as that sort of interface between you and the RISE service.
Yeah, I mean, part of for example, a service that we would provide would entail working with all other partners involved to ensure that, you know, whatever the customer's looking for, we streamline and we work together to deliver and manage what's being delivered.
I think we're nearly out of time, aren't we, Amanda?
Yeah, so we are at time. So that there were a couple of other questions, so we will get back to people directly. But just to finally, so there is one here that I can ask: how do customers get ready for RISE with SAP and S4? Are we able to answer that one quickly?
I think.
Come talk to us. Come talk to us.
Yeah, apart from the obvious, come talk to us. Look, I think we've probably touched on it throughout it. So I think getting some advice is probably key. There are organisations, including Lemongrass, that can provide that, and certainly engaging SAP in a more detailed conversation. Barry's going to say operate design, no doubt. So how do you understand the roles and responsibilities and who does it? But I think for me, it's probably stepping back a little bit and just saying, I know there's an impending deadline of 2027 and 2030, and that's driving some decision and some investment. It's hard to find good S4 people, so everyone's starting to move now. But I think it still needs to remain part of the broader IT strategy. You need to understand when you're moving one of the critical workloads in your organisation that it also needs to consider the things that are immediately satellite around that SAP system, and make sure that particularly if you're going for a transformation, that transformation includes other things, not just the lift and shift into RISE. So for me, that's probably the big ones. I think we're probably out of time.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you very much to everybody who has joined today, and we will send out the on-demand version in the next few days. Thank you. Thank you, team.
Thank you all.
All right. Thanks all. Thanks for listening. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.